Should the federal judge, in my hypothetical, hold some sort of hearing as to why the special counsel, in my hypothetical, alleges that these people, including but not limited to sitting United States senators, would commit a federal crime of destroying evidence or tampering with witnesses?
Welcome back to Freedom Forge, the channel where we stand up for the Constitution, for accountability, and for the truth, no matter who it offends in Washington. If you value freedom, the rule of law, and holding our government to the highest standard, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. You don't want to miss any of our deep dives into the stories the mainstream media tries to bury. Today, we're breaking down a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing clip that's raising some serious alarms about government overreach, the weaponization of the Justice Department, and the complete disregard for the rule of law that's become all too common under this administration. Senator John Kennedy, one of the few voices in the Senate who isn't afraid to ask the hard questions, grilled Professor Luther about the way Special Counsel Jack Smith and a federal judge handled the subpoenaing of sitting U.S. senators' phone records. This isn't just inside baseball, folks. This is about whether our elected representatives, and by extension we the people, have any protection left from a politicized DOJ.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for my voice. Professor Luther, I don't want to talk to you, sir, about Judge Boasberg or Booberg or whatever his name is. I don't know the man. I want to talk to you about federal criminal practice and procedure. Suppose the Attorney General appoints a special counsel to investigate criminal conduct. And the special counsel goes to a federal district judge and says, I want to subpoena these people's phone records. If that list of people includes sitting United States senators, does the special counsel have a legal or moral obligation to tell the judge that they're members of the U.S. Senate?
Yes, it's my understanding under 2 U.S.C. 6628 he would.
Okay.
And as a senator, you have a speech.
The Justice Department at that time had a policy
Yes.
that that information was not to be passed on to the district judge. Is that correct?
Yes, that policy was referenced by Jack Smith at his House Judiciary Committee testimony, and it's referenced in the letter that Senator Whitehouse introduced, written by the Director of the Administrative Office of the Courts in defense of Judge Boasberg. My response to that is DOJ policy does not supplant federal law.
Okay. So if the special counsel in my hypothetical said what Mr. Smith allegedly said, which is the dog ate my homework, I couldn't do it because the DOJ had a policy. Does the federal judge in my hypothetical have a legal or a moral obligation to inquire?
Yes. That's how can you enter an order without any facts?
Should the federal judge, in my hypothetical, hold some sort of hearing as to why the special counsel, in my hypothetical, alleges that these people, including but not limited to sitting United States senators, would commit a federal crime of destroying evidence or tampering with witnesses?
I think briefing would be an adequate place to start, ultimately culminating in a hearing. And I think Judge Boasberg should hold Jack Smith in contempt for not doing precisely that. I mean, Judge Boasberg's trying to push...
Would you expect a federal district court judge to know that with all these subpoenas flying around, that there is a statute saying you can't turn over the phone records of a United States senator without them knowing about it? Would you expect that federal district court judge to know the law?
Absolutely. If it's too hard for him, he can resign.
Would it be grossly negligent or malfeasance if this federal judge was a smart guy and he knew, but that these phone records might be for sitting United States senators, but he didn't inquire?
I think that would be basis for judicial misconduct and ultimately an impeachment inquiry.
Let's suppose that the federal district judge signed the order. And the federal district judge said, yeah, you can have the records, and I'm going to sign this order saying that this has to remain confidential because these people might destroy evidence. And let's suppose that the next stop for this special counsel was, let's just say, Verizon. Do you know a person by the name of Vandana Venkatesh?
I don't, but before we get there, I think the judge would need an internal opinion under seal describing his basis for
I
passing this
appreciate
law.
that. Do you know a person by the name of Vandana Venkatesh?
I'm not familiar with that individual.
Okay, she is the executive vice president and general counsel of Verizon. Did you know that?
I did not.
Well, sure you do. I just told you.
Oh,
Are you aware that last year she made $6.44 million?
I am now.
Yeah. She must be pretty smart, huh? Would you expect someone this smart to say, whoa, Mr. Special Counsel, I've got this list you gave me. Are any of these people sitting United States senators? Wouldn't you expect her to inquire?
Yeah, I expect companies to give the Senate a little more respect than they gave here.
And if the special counsel didn't refuse to tell her, if he said, Ms. Venkatesh, I can't tell you that. If I told you, I'd have to drown you in the Pacific. Wouldn't you expect her to seek a court order quashing the subpoena, if for no other reason but to cover her elbow?
I think the members here have a right to have expected that.
And if she didn't do that, either out of ignorance, maybe she was tired from counting her money all day, I don't know. But if she didn't do that, would that be malpractice?
I think it would be worse, Senator. As I mentioned in my written testimony, I think Judge Boasberg and Jack Smith subjected these service providers potential similar criminal or civil liability for not.
But here's my point. In the situation I described, if the special counsel goes to these to the telephone companies, these are smart people. Their lawyers are paid a lot of money. They're supposed to be as smart as Professor Vladeck. And if they just sat there like a bump on a log and said, okay, sure, anything you want, here's the records, without inquiring in this environment as to whether or not they were sitting U.S. senators, without saying, you know, I better cover my rear end here and file a motion to quash. Wouldn't that be gross negligence and incur liability on behalf of Verizon and others who demonstrated this special kind of stupidity?
It's a very significant risk, and Jack Smith and Judge Boasberg put them in that situation.
Boy, I've gone way over. But then you did too, Cruz. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let me walk you through what happened. Senator Kennedy is questioning whether Jack Smith, Joe Biden's handpicked special counsel, followed the law when he tried to get the phone records of United States senators. Now, there's a federal law, 2 U.S.C. 6628, that says if you want to subpoena a senator's records, you have to tell the judge those people are senators. Why? Because the founders understood that the executive branch shouldn't be able to secretly spy on the legislative branch. It's a basic check on power, and it's meant to protect our entire system from tyranny. But according to Professor Luther's testimony, Jack Smith didn't do that. Instead, he claimed DOJ policy said he couldn't tell the judge who the targets were. Now, let's be clear, DOJ policy is not the law. The law is the law. When you let unelected bureaucrats make up their own rules and ignore Congress, you no longer have a republic. You have a banana republic, where the people with the most power do whatever they want. Professor Luther was absolutely right to say that DOJ policy does not override federal statute. If Jack Smith didn't inform a judge as required by law, that's not just a technicality. That's violating the separation of powers. And if the judge, in this case Judge Boasberg, didn't even bother to ask, hey, are these subpoenas targeting sitting senators? Then what's the point of having a judge at all? If you're just going to rubber stamp whatever the government asks for, you're not protecting anybody's rights. Luther went further, saying the judge had a legal and moral obligation to inquire. He said that failing to do so could be judicial misconduct, something that could and should lead to impeachment. That's how serious this is. The left loves to talk about threats to democracy, but when the DOJ tries to secretly go after senators and the courts just look the other way, that's the real threat to the republic. And let's not forget the private sector's role in this. Senator Kennedy brought up the general counsel of Verizon, Vanna Vincesh. She made over $6 million last year running legal for one of the biggest phone companies in America. You'd think for that kind of money, she'd know the law. You'd think she'd ask, are any of these phone records you're asking for from sitting senators? But apparently, she didn't. This is what happens when corporate America gets too cozy with the federal government. They stop protecting their customers, whether you're a senator or just a regular American. Kennedy called it gross negligence, and he's right. When you just turn over records to the government without asking any questions, you're not just risking a lawsuit. You're risking the trust of the American people. As a conservative patriot, I find this all outrageous, but sadly, not surprising. 4 years now, we've watched the DOJ and the FBI target political opponents, ignore the law, and get away with it. We've seen judges look the other way, and big corporations play along because they're more afraid of government regulators than they are of violating your privacy. What this hearing exposed is a culture of lawlessness at the very top of our government. And if they can do this to senators, what hope does the average citizen have? We're supposed to be a nation of laws, not men. The law applies to everyone, even special counsels, even federal judges, even highly paid corporate lawyers. This is why conservatives have been demanding real accountability, real oversight, and real consequences for breaking the rules. We need more senators like John Kennedy who aren't afraid to demand answers and call out corruption, no matter where it leads. And we need to keep the pressure on Congress to rein in the DOJ, break up the unholy alliance between big tech and big government, and restore the rule of law in this country. I want to leave you with this. The reason our system has survived for over 2 centuries is because we have checks and balances, and because ordinary Americans keep demanding accountability from those in power. Don't let them take that away. Stay informed, stay engaged, and don't be afraid to speak up when you see the government abusing its power. If you got value from this breakdown, help us fight the censorship by smashing that like button and subscribing to Freedom Forge. Share this video so your friends and family can see what's really going on behind the scenes in Washington. And let me know in the comments. Do you trust the DOJ to follow the law? Do you think Judge Boasberg and Jack Smith should be held accountable? I want to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, Patriots. Stay vigilant, stay free, and I'll see you in the next video.